Hello, bonjour, and welcome to the Don't Waste Water podcast. I'm your host, Antoine Walter, and in today's episode, I am thrilled to welcome Nick Nicholas as my guest. Nick is Technical Director of Genesis Water Treatment, an award-winning leader in specialized drinking water, wastewater treatment, and reuse solutions. In this episode, Nick will share why companies should consider sustainability as a priority, especially in shaky times, and how GWT guides the typical plant manager I will be role-playing today through this transformative process. He'll warn us from 3 pitfalls industrials keep entangling themselves into, and he'll share some project insight into a recent PFAS removal process he was working on. This and much more is on our agenda for today, right after our sponsor's introduction.
You're listening to Don't Waste Water, the podcast that helps water professionals to improve their wastewater treatment, optimize their operation costs, and keep up with the latest market trends. This podcast is brought to you by GF Piping Systems. As a leading supplier of piping systems made of plastics and metal, GF Piping Systems is the global expert for the safe and reliable transportation of water, chemicals, and gas. For more information, visit gfps.com.
Hi, Nick, and welcome to the show. I'm glad having you, and I'm also pretty happy to be able to go on the other side of the ocean this morning, because you're sitting in Holland right now, right?
That's correct.
So let's start with the postcard. Just describe me how beautiful the weather is on your end of the world.
Right now, it's basically partly clouded skies in the range of approximately about 27 to 30 Celsius. Looking fairly well. I'm glad we don't have any hurricanes right now that are affecting us. That's another good thing on this part of the world is during these months is typically a lot of tropical storms and hurricanes. So we're in the clear right now. So I'm grateful for that.
That's good to hear. And now let me do a crappy transition, but somehow a hurricane is a kind of genesis. See what I did?
That's right.
So maybe can you start by pitching us your company?
Sure. Genesis Water Technologies, or GWT as we say in acronym, is a global water treatment engineering solutions company with manufacturing capabilities. We are headquartered in Maitland, Florida, which is just north of Orlando in the U.S. We do have a presence as well in Southeast Asia, South America, and Sub-Saharan Africa at this point. Basically, that's in a nutshell in terms of Genesis presence here in the U.S. as well as overseas.
So how do you work? Is it like technical advice comes from the headquarters and gets spread worldwide, or each office is kind of independent?
Yeah, so basically each office typically has independence in terms of business development and implementation of the business strategy that comes from headquarters. And they each have basically their own localized design team with main design and technology coming from the US side.
And so you were working in the headquarters. So what's your role exactly?
So my role is technical director in our company. Basically, is part of the executive team would be basically technical director, or you can say managing director sometimes. But ours is our lead role is technical director. And then above that, we have our board. And then below that, it's basically the regional managers of each of the offices in Southeast Asia, South America, and Sub-Saharan Africa, and then their relevant teams.
So you've mentioned your presence, but what sets you apart in this world of water and wastewater treatment? What's your secret sauce?
So basically, Genesis Water Technologies, what we do essentially is solve contaminated water problems worldwide with cost-effective and efficient solutions. Those are both systems and services for both industrial organizations and water utilities. And within that, GWT basically solves these problems through 3 different solution categories. And those solution categories basically are broken up into our process optimization engineering services, our specialized modular treatment system solutions, which integrates AI technology or artificial intelligence technology, and our treatment medias. So those basically are composed of specific flocculants, treatment granular medias, and our disinfection chemical called GenClean.
So does that come in a specific order that you would start, for instance, with process optimization, then grow that into modular treatment and end up with the treatment media? Or is it fully three different kind of things you can do, totally unrelated?
So basically it's both based on the needs of the client. And sometimes the client just need one of those specific solution categories. In other cases, as you mentioned, we go through each one of the steps, which would be the engineering optimization first, and then the implementation of the treatment system. And then follow on to that would be we call them consumables, which would be the treatment medias, flocculants, or the GenClean disinfection.
So I think this leads us quite smoothly into our deep dive, because what I would propose you is a kind of role play. Let's assume I am one of your prospects or lead. I'm an industrial owner. It's nice because in my fantasy, I can create like factories where I'm running those factories, but it's cool. I'm an industrial plant manager. Let's start from the very roots of it. Why should I bother about water sustainability?
Now, that's an interesting question. Why should you bother? What we do is we'll take that from basically what is sustainability and what is water sustainability. And then we'll go into why should you care or why should you bother. Well, first, sustainability, we can break that down into three foundational elements. One would be social, next would be economical, and the last one would be environmental. So traditional business models, they aim to basically create value for shareholders, often at the expense of other stakeholders. But in this case, with sustainable businesses, they basically are redefining the corporate ecosystem by designing models that create value for both stakeholders as well as shareholders. Those include employees, shareholders, their supply chain, civil society, and the planet at large. So when you're looking at a key strategic value of water sustainability, well, that comes from the need to continually talk with and learn from key stakeholders, right? So through continuous dialogue with the stakeholders and continuous improvement, a company with a sustainability agenda is then better positioned to anticipate and react to economic change, to social, environmental, and regulatory changes as they arise, and with a heightened sense of concern for each one of those areas. These issues, they have a dramatic social and financial impact on the company itself, its operations and risk management. So taking this approach, why should you bother? Well, you should bother because it dramatically affects both the social impact of the particular plant that you're operating or plants, as well as the financial impact of the firm itself.
So basically, it makes me stronger if I start launching this kind of initiative because it makes me, of course, sustainable over the long run.
That's correct.
I guess I have to start from somewhere. So do I have to identify myself the kind of problems that I would have? Or maybe can you be a helping hand and help me make a diagnosis of what could be done better?
Yes. So definitely we would help in terms of identifying first the advantages or benefits to sustainability for you. So that would first essentially be the process optimization. So we would look at, okay, what are the benefits or impact that you can generate from these sustainable initiatives? And then from there, look at, well, how you can implement them and how you can sustain them into the future.
I think I skipped an important step. I didn't define myself, my identity. What would be the perfect persona for you? What kind of industry can reap the most benefits of this sustainability approach?
We could say probably the main industries that we could look at are energy sector and the pulp and paper sector. Those particular industry sectors typically have the greatest amount of impact for sustainability initiatives, and they're generally the largest consumers of water in industry. So targeting those specific industry sectors would definitely benefit both the industry clients as well as the impact for for the environment and social impact of the surrounding society.
So let's take the principle that I'm from the energy sector. What I'm wondering is what could be my level of self-consciousness today about my water usage? How is it in this kind of industry? Is it like they are perfectly aware of what they are doing with water, or do you also have to educate them a bit to help them see what's invisible to them?
That's correct. So basically there is a education step. First, essentially, it would be that initial education, making them aware of what they're dealing with, what are the impacts of these invisible things that they may not see. And that's always the first step is education. Upon that, then you could basically further define what the specific strategies are once the education process has been understood.
So when you do process optimization, that has to start from the fact that I have a process. So basically you come and watch what I'm doing, or you have kind of supervision, you leverage, you mentioned AI, you mentioned IoT. Is it this kind of stuff which I have to envision, or how do you do that?
Yeah, so basically what we do in that first step of optimization is look at your current process. So with your current process, it can be a myriad of things. We analyze is the current process that you have now, and look at, well, how can we optimize that current process? So basically that's viewing the process itself, viewing the water analysis at each stage of the process. And then that's where in that second second phase, when we do the recommendation for system solutions, we're able to integrate AI within the programs of the specific systems to optimize the treatment process for those particular clients.
That is basically your second step, the modular treatment, advanced modular treatment step. So now let's assume that my diagnosis is done. You found out that there are some optimization which can be done on the plant. So you would run directly into that modular treatment, right?
That's correct. So after that first step, we diagnosed what we can optimize. We look at the impact of the changes on operating cost. There's other parameters related to water quality, etc. Then that second step, we basically go into treatability. And that treatability, basically, it looks at basically a bench test. And from that bench test, we can either determine if it's something that we have done previously and are confident in the results. We can go from the lab test all the way to a full-scale system, or we can go from a bench test to a small-scale system and then full-scale system at that point.
Wide is your catalog of things you've already done where you can say you're confident to directly jump from the bench test to the full scale?
Basically, when we analyze those results, we're able to, based on our experience, and jump into that full scale, knowing with confidence that those parameters will be achieved.
So it's an industry where you've already been working with, or the kind of water you've already seen. What would be the leading parameter?
Basically, two parameters that you mentioned, both experience in the sector as well as experience with that particular water quality profile.
Okay. So let's assume, both cases would work actually, but when you say that you start making a small scale or going directly to the full scale, that means some equipment, that means some actual process treatment steps. Is it something that you deliver, or is it a place where you play a consulting role?
Basically, in this stage, this second phase, basically the provision of equipment. So what we would do is we would provide both our GWT technology as well as any auxiliary technology would be integrated in that particular new system process to maximize the benefits that were witnessed in the process optimization report.
So you act as an engineering, procurement, and construction company.
Yeah, so what we do in that phase, we are not contractors, but we work with local implementation partners, our contractors, to basically install the treatment solutions at the client site.
So that means that you have this process knowledge, you have some proprietary technologies, and then for the rest, you're building a team, as I would say, for each project with local people and also other technologies.
That's correct.
So you mentioned that you're doing optimization, but when you're doing optimization, you have to optimize according to certain parameters. So what would be these indicators that you can take to say what you're doing is working, or maybe there's still some further improvement to do?
What we do is basically we have questions surrounding what we call key performance indicators. And basically these questions include, is water an important topic for the company or for the site? What is the amount of water used? Does the company or site have or can foresee water-related or water-induced problems? How critical is water for production, volume, or quality? And what opportunities are there for water savings and efficiency improvements? Another one are what are the costs for water treatment, and what are the opportunities for cost reduction? So when we look at those particular questions, then we go into, okay, how do we measure those particular questions? And those are the KPIs, or key performance indicators. And those basically are, what is the total water usage of this particular client's plant or client treatment process? What are the demands for this particular process, and flow rates and water quality, regulatory water parameters that need to be involved? What is the water demand for this particular client process? Is there a demand for cooling water? Is there a demand for other non-potable uses such as irrigation or other uses of this particular water? What is the cost for inlet water into the plant? How is that accounted for? What is the wastewater volume? And basically, finally, what is the cost for water outlet treatment? So that would be, including the cost of handling residues such as sludge, concentrates. Those are the particular KPIs that would be identified in order to make a proper decision.
So let's assume I'm trying to make a reuse project. So I have some wastewater and I'm not very happy with my total consumption because I have to take much water from the network. And at the other end, I'm just rejecting too much wastewater. So I'd like to close a bit that loop.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess one key performance indicator will be on how much I'm able to recycle.
Correct.
First, just out of curiosity, what's the amount which is, let's say, an industry benchmark today? How much would a typical industrial energy user like me, I mean, someone from the sector of energy, how much would I be reusing already?
Typically, these particular energy end users need work in terms of their water reuse initiatives. A lot of times they typically are reusing less than 10% in certain cases. So there's definitely room for improvement in your sector.
So that sounds like a good start. I mean, if I'm reusing only 10% of my water, of course, there's some way to go. So what did you watch? What did you take on your watch in order to then bring me some process optimization?
So what we would do there basically is, analyze your process that's concerned, then determine based on that, okay, well, how much can we increase that percentage to meet both your requirements as well as stay within a realm of cost parameters to make it economically justifiable for you to reuse.
I think you've said kind of a magic word with this economically viable aspect, because I guess many kind of process might be able to solve my issue, but what's going to be the deciding factor is going to be the economics of that. So I get it that I'm a sustainable and socially responsible company. So I'm willing to make some changes, but not fully at the cost of my profitability. How economically viable would it be for me to go from 10% reuse to, 60% reuse? Is it something which needs a lot of willpower, or can you convince me with maybe hard economical facts that it's also in my upper interest to move to that?
Yes, that's a key step of the first process, which is the optimization. We're able to look at, okay, you can move from 10% to, let's say, 60%, and this will be the cost savings for you to move up to that specific percentage, and maintaining the economic viability of the particular initiative. Of course, that plays into what is my cost of water outlet and how that plays a role in the economic viability of the particular initiative.
So there must be also some external factors like an incentive from the local government saying that you should not reject that much, which will give a higher cost to my wastewater. Or do you say that without incentives, with the state of today's technology, it's already viable to reuse almost a full stream?
This is, of course, based on location. Certain locations have different regulations, and is basically what we say regulation driven in accordance with they're wanting to become more responsibly sustainable. So what we look at is, okay, based on the location, determine the feasibility of their reuse efforts based on other external factors as well, such as scarcity or issues relating to what their inputs water costs, which is another key factor in their reuse initiative.
Okay, so I think you've convinced me that I need to do something about this reuse. And I'd like to go back to your process aspect. You mentioned that you have a kind of part of it, which is the proprietary technology, and some other stuff which you might take from partnering companies. But what's the core of GWT's technology? What is your portfolio and where are you at home?
So basically, what is the core of our portfolio? Well, core of our portfolio on a system side is basically both in two realms. One realm for industry is we look at basically the secondary treatment and tertiary treatment, basically where our advantages are. In secondary treatment, we're looking at specialized technology similar to electrochemistry, utilizing those particular advantages with that specific technology, using advanced oxidation technologies that are both cost effective, being able to delivered via chemical feed pump or some electrochemical way. In the tertiary stage is our membrane technology. Each one of these technologies that I mentioned, they all basically utilize artificial intelligence parameters or logic within their system controllers to optimize the treatment performance at each one of these stages.
So can you describe me a bit how that works, these advanced artificial intelligence sensors that you have? Is it really in the sensor side? Is it on the controller side? Where does it lie, this AI?
It lies in the controller itself. So basically, it's a logarithmic algorithm. That algorithm basically continuously calculates accordingly based on the parameters of the particular water quality. So that's how it's able to optimize both the operating costs and the treatment performance of each one of the technologies.
So you're taking off-the-shelf sensors, you build them together with your technology to make like a skidded, or a treatment solution. And on top of that, you program your controllers to have some AI inside so that they can have a watch on the various parameters of the plant in order to still have this optimized way of running it.
That's correct.
So what's the level of optimization you are reaching? Is it advices, or do you also automate kind of the optimization you're doing?
Yeah, so basically it's automated. Each of the systems are automated via a programmable logic controller, and they each have a human machine interface with the capability of remote monitoring. That remote monitoring typically is via a internet connection through a secure web dashboard. So they're able to monitor the particular system performance parameters either locally at the system itself or remotely at let's say a control room or another location.
So just for me to understand, to have a practical example, let's assume I have an ultrafiltration step from GWT. What exactly are you monitoring? Is it the fouling of the membrane? Is it the backwash cycles? Is it the aging of the membrane? On which kind of lever can you act?
So basically what we're doing is monitoring the water quality and its effects in particular membrane itself and on the treated water performance. So in that controller, we're able to basically optimize the cleaning cycle or backwash cycle to accommodate those variations based on a varying inlet water quality.
Okay. So once we've decided on the process, we've decided on the way to treat all of that. Let's assume also that I'm digging into an area where you are in an industry where you would directly go to a full scale. Now we come to the point of time where you need to actually install it on my premises. How does that work? So you mentioned that you are working with a contractor. So I guess the contractor is the one installing on site and you do the supervision. Did I understand that right?
That's correct. That's correct. So, basically, the qualified contractors that we work with are the implementation contractors. So they would be basically implementing the systems according to the system process diagrams that are provided by DWT. And we provide basically the supervision and commissioning of each one of the systems themselves.
So they also do the commissioning and they do the transfer to the end user. And you then can come back in operation because you can also go to that remote monitoring step where you have a watch of the process.
That's correct. And the remote monitoring, that's typically an agreement that is provided to the client as a service. So it basically allows for a continuous engagement with the client over a long time to assess their ongoing needs accordingly.
And so that's where the third part of your business unit comes in, because you have that treatment media aspect. So I guess that's more on the consumables and the operations side of things. And there you can also support the customers on an ongoing basis.
That's correct. So with that client engagement, we're able to then provide those ongoing consumable items such as your treatment media or the flocculant or our Gen Clean disinfection products to maintain their operation in the best way.
Okay, so I think with that, I'm pretty confident that we started with a good reason to do it. We developed the right process, you scaled it, we took it into operation, it's working. I have all of that working very smoothly. So thanks for that. In our example, that works pretty nice. Now, let's assume I wasn't that lucky and maybe I wasn't involved with you from the very beginning. What are, from your experience, the 3 pitfalls that keep coming in the way of people like me launching a sustainability initiative?
That's a good question. 3 pitfalls to avoid, we would advise, would be to be aware of the wastewater quality. Now, those variations in wastewater quality can be detrimental on wastewater reuse initiatives, because if you don't use the right technology and the right approach, the operating costs can basically destroy the wastewater reuse initiative and the feasibility of that particular initiative that you're trying to achieve. The second one, we would look to be aware of ever-changing regulatory requirements and their effects on the economic viability of the wastewater reuse initiatives. And that's one thing to be very keen to look for. The last one we would advise would be to understand the advantages and disadvantages of wastewater reuse and their impact on the key performance indicators. Those basically are the keys to have a successful, economically viable wastewater reuse initiative.
So basically, your number 1 is on the wastewater quality, which means basically if I'm shit in, shit out, if I may say so. If I don't have the right data, of course, I have low chances to get it straight. The changing regulation as well is something I understand quite well, is that, of course, we live in an evolving environment. But on the perks, advantages and cons of wastewater reuse, you mean that I have to have a high level of consciousness about what I'm doing right now. Did I understand this one right?
That's correct. That's correct.
So does it happen that sometimes I need a helping hand? Like I'm not absolutely sure what's good for me or what's bad for me. And then can you be that third part, which is kind of agnostic and can help me with that?
Yes, that's why we start with our step 1, which is the process optimization, because a lot of times you don't know what you need or the advantage or disadvantages of particular technologies and their impacts on your initiative. So that's where we play a key first role in helping you evaluate those particular aspects first.
Okay, so that's like at the hospital, you don't go directly to get a cure. You have to start with the diagnosis. Makes sense. So I think that's pretty it for this deep dive. So if it's fine with you, Nick, and thanks for helping me as an industrial, I'd like to switch to the rapid fire questions.
Sure.
It's time for the rapid fire questions.
So in this last section, I try to keep the questions short. So you can also try to keep the answers short. But of course, I don't shut down the microphone. So if you need to explain a bit more, I'm more than happy to hear from you. So my first question would be, what is the most exciting project you've been working on and why?
The most exciting project that we've been working on is actually a water reuse project. This particular project basically involves one of the emerging contaminants that we have seen now in the U.S. and in other places across the world, and that is PFAS compounds. These particular compounds, they're basically called forever compounds because they don't degrade as easily as other particular compounds found in nature. So they require a multi-step process, and the process has to be economical in nature, but also be able to handle these particular compounds. So we found this particular product to be intriguing and yet satisfying.
Now I'm curious, what did you use as a process to remove these PFAS?
Basically, what we found is we used our GenClean. GenClean is basically our new advanced oxidation liquid product. It basically, we were able to develop this particular liquid advanced oxidation process to work hand in hand with a granular activated carbon absorption system to basically reduce the PFAS compounds within water and at a justifiable cost, which was the key to that particular initiative, is economically justifiable.
Nice, because I'm hearing that's a concern, and it's not that often that people come up and saying, well, we found a solution plus economically viable. So it looks like you're real on something. Interesting.
That's right.
So what's your favorite part of your current job?
The favorite part of my current job is the consistently changing landscape of water and wastewater. It's never something that is staying static. It's a dynamic industry. That's what we foresee for the ongoing future. Is one of the most favorite parts of this particular job.
So in this dynamic industry, what is the trend to watch out?
The trend to watch out is basically ongoing moves to sustainability initiatives, paying close attention to issues around water scarcity, climate change, and regulatory impact, and how those play a role in the impact of organizations and utilities worldwide.
What is the thing you care the most, and what's the one you care the least when you're designing a new product or process?
So what we care the most basically is on two things. We look at what is the treatment efficiency of this particular product, and the demand of the client to want to treat this particular thing. The second is coming back to the financial viability of the particular product for the client. So those are the two key aspects of looking at designing a new product or process for us.
But what is the one that you would care the less?
Basically looking at is this particular product larger or small scale. We don't necessarily care about that. We just care about what the need is for the client. So we don't necessarily care how big or how small scale the particular system needs to be, as long as it's a problem that is shared by many industry clients.
Okay. Do you have sources to recommend to keep up with the water and wastewater market and the trends?
Yes, so we do have some sources to recommend. These are particular publications and industry reports. These would come from such sources as, of course, our particular thought leadership blog, which is our GWT thought leadership blog, as well as other industry sources such as Water Online. United Nations has a great sustainability goals report, which has a section on water sustainability objectives. Those are really good to look at and provide very good, useful information.
Are you a surfer?
No, not a surfer, but I can say that I have tried it. Not the best at it, but
I'm asking because I saw you sharing some articles from surfer.com, and I was wondering if you, because it was about sustainability and it was about water treatment, so it made fully sense. But I was just wondering if you happened to stumble upon them by accident, or if you are actually a surfer. So now I know.
yeah, that was actually something that I stumbled upon, and I was looking at at that. I think, oh, this definitely applies, and see the logic in it. So let me share it.
So actually, you didn't mention your own LinkedIn account, but I'm going to add that into the sources, which you could recommend, because it's interesting. Of course, there's your blog, which is interesting as well. But on top of the blog, you're also sharing a lot of other contents to do a nice curation, and it's interesting to follow you at this. So I would recommend that to the listeners. And of course, I'm putting all the links you mentioned into the episode notes.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for bringing that up, because I do share quite a lot of content on LinkedIn, and it would be great for people to follow that and get some great knowledge along the way.
So Nick, I have a last question for you, which is: would you have someone to recommend that I should definitely invite on that same microphone anytime soon?
Yes, definitely. I have a couple of interesting guests that I think that could be definitely applicable, and I'll definitely share that with you here in the next coming weeks.
Okay, so you don't want to risk it to tell it at that microphone. Okay, I get it. So those must be really intriguing and nice guests. So I'm looking forward.
That's true. That's definitely true. Don't want to step on toes or commit them prematurely, but definitely that will be something to move forward with.
I understand. So Nick, you've been an awesome guest, and thanks a lot for that. I hope that people will have as much fun listening to you than I had discussing with you. And I wish you a nice day going on from there, and with my French accent to the other side of the Atlantic.
No problem. I'm great to listen to you and share these American French dialects as we cross the pond here.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to Don't Waste Water. This podcast was brought to you by GF Piping Systems. Loved this episode? Head over to Apple Podcasts to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. See you next time.